gentlemen, welcome to the Virgo Verdict. I am your host, Sherrod Corn, and my co-host is...
Tracy Ricks. You can call me T Ricks. You can call me Ricks. Don't call me out my name. Nothing negative though.
All right, all right. She gave you the rules.
Yeah.
Now, today's topic is...
The 7 listening types.
Okay,
And before we even considered doing this topic, I didn't even realize there were 7 different listening types. I just thought listening was, listening. I didn't know that they were divided into subcategories. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
okay, will do.
You ready to get in?
Yep, ready to get in.
Okay, so the 7 types are informational, discriminative, biased, sympathetic, comprehensive, empathetic or therapeutic, and critical listening.
Okay,
And I think that we all do these 7 different types of listening, but we're not necessarily consciously aware that that's
okay,
the type of listening that we're doing. I think we automatically just, depending on the situation or the conversation, I think we listen according to what's necessary at the time,
right,
but
right.
without even knowing it though. Because it's let's see, what do they say? They say discriminative listening is the first listening type that we are born with. So discriminative listening is when you're listening, but you're paying attention to the verbal cues like the tone,
Mm,
that's used when somebody is speaking. Like babies have discriminative listening.
like it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
It's how you say it.
Okay,
So like babies are very in tune that way. So like when they hear their mother's voice, usually when they come out, mom's voice is very soothing. And plus they recognize the mother's voice from being in the womb.
so if
It's
I was
very
singing to the
soothing.
kid, like I was just singing earlier, you think they'll be in tune with me?
Y'all, no, it's not like that. It's not like that at all. Let's hope that mama's voice sound better than yours. Y'all, let me tell y'all, Sharab was about to go in
Oh, that's
and
right.
he was singing.
That's
He
right.
had his whole face toe
I
up and
had that
everything.
singer
He was
face. Whoa,
ready. He was about
whoa,
to have a whole look.
whoa.
That's
That
that's it. No, we're not gonna do that. Um,
Key Sweat out here singing.
Keith Sweat is a horrible singer, and I don't know how he's been this popular for these many years.
Hey, hell of
And
a
he
writer.
said, I heard or saw something on Facebook where he said he was better than Whitney Houston or something like that. And I
He,
was
he
like,
was talking
Keith
about
Sweat.
dancing because Whitney couldn't dance. He had to be done.
He had to be. He had to be because he couldn't have been talking about singing. But anyway, so it says that we use this type, I'm talking about discriminative listening.
Okay.
We use this type of listening before we even know how to understand words. Instead of relying on words, discriminative listening uses tone of voice, verbal cues, and other changes in sound. But there are people in the world who cannot pick up on verbal cues, who cannot like read the room, um, who are not tuned into tone and don't even, they don't be paying attention. And for me, that means that you're not listening.
Okay, that's like tone
You're
deaf.
not even paying attention. You're not reading the room at all. That means that you don't know how to use discriminative listening.
Okay.
And I think that crazy people do that. Or people with some type of mental or cognitive disorder
Wouldn't people
would
that
not be able.
really was into themselves, just only into themselves, more so selfish, kind of be that way too? Like, yeah, it's all about
Yeah.
me. I'm walking in. I don't
It's
care what y'all think, feels about me.
yeah.
Shit.
Narcissists.
That's
Do
how.
narciss Well, I think narcissists probably do use
Mm,
discriminative listening, and they use that as a tool to exert their narcissism on others.
okay.
Like
I'm gonna pull
for
up the
for
seven.
example, um if me and you are having a disagreement and I say something and I don't mean it in a messed up way and my tone isn't fucked up, a narcissist might say, I don't like your tone. And I ain't even said anything fucked up or my tone wasn't nothing, but they'll start shit to make it always be about the other person. Because narcissists,
Hmm.
it can never be them. It's never them. It's always you, and they find things to make it always you. And if you argue with the narcissist, they'll have you thinking you fucking crazy.
Oh man, I mean,
They will. It's
but
ridiculous.
that's what their talent is, deflecting
Mm.
everything off of them onto you, and have you thinking like, damn, I need help.
Yeah, I'm fucked up. They'll have you thinking that you were fucked up because I was involved with a narcissist and I didn't really even know that he was a narcissist. And he really, for a minute, had me thinking I was the problem.
Mm.
I I did, and it was ridiculous, but I ended up getting out. So anyway, um, what else? So the first one, what's the first one? Informational listening.
Hmm.
Informational listening is when you want to learn something. You use informational listening to understand and retain information. That's the type of listening we use when we're at school
Okay.
or at work, um, or at therapy. Um, what
Or
else?
we should be
Or
using it.
anywhere where we're trying to gain some
Yeah, about to say we
information.
should use that like in a relationships. When it's time to sit down
Absolutely.
and talk and communicate, like we discussed the 5 C's.
Okay.
You and I sit down and talk, or converse or communicate. When you and I talk, we should be speaking to learn and listen, and that's what help us better our relationship when we learn more about one another. And informational listening would be something that we're gaining information for one another. If I say,
Yes.
T Rex, what's wrong with you? I don't know. I don't know. You
So
know
you
how
gotta
I
use
get.
that voice.
It's cold outside. Be like, you in the house though. So what? The snow. Be like, okay.
You gotta do the whole dialogue with that voice though. That is not how I sound. Okay, bias listening.
Bias listening. All right.
Bias listening is always also known as selective listening. That happens frequently in relationships too. Sometimes people hear, I mean, it happens everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
but in relationships, sometimes people hear what the fuck they want to hear.
Right.
You know, they they do. So like you could tell your partner all day long, this is my issue, this is what I like or this is what I don't like. And then all they'll hear is a certain piece, the piece that resonated with them the most or that
Okay.
that egged them or made them mad or did something to them, made them respond.
Let's see. I pulled
And
this up so I can
then
read along with you.
sympathetic listening.
Mm-hmm.
Sympathetic listening is driven by emotion, and that's the kind of listening that we use when we talking to our friends, um, when the person we're listening to has an issue.
Okay.
I think during sympathetic listening that it should be just listening, and then when they want a response from you, that's when you respond. I think it's unbiased. You're just allowing this person to tell you their story or to tell
Okay.
you, what's happening. But do you think that it is important to know the seven types? Just because I had no idea. But do you think it's important? Like this is important information?
I do because I was actually taking a online coaching class, and it
Mm.
it gave us 4 types: empathetic, sympathetic, passive, and I forgot the active
So you
listening.
weren't listening.
Well, I mean, it's like school. I mean, I started going to sleep. Anyway, but yeah, I think people do need to understand what it is we need to do for one another, and
Hmm.
and how do we get there. And I think this is pertinent information because, like you say, we do all 7. We just don't know what we're doing,
Yes.
and we probably don't know when to use them.
Okay. Now, number 5 is comprehensive listening. And it says that this type of listening is usually developed in early childhood. People use comprehensive listening, excuse me, to understand what someone is saying using words. That's just
Okay.
regular listening.
Okay.
What we're doing all day, every day. Just regular, you know, where's the gas station? How long do it take to get to McDonald's? Stuff like that. Things that we need to hear, that's what we hear.
But you know
And
what?
then empathetic or therapeutic listening is useful to help you see from another person's perspective.
Okay.
Um, so let's say you and I, um, we have a disagreement
Hmm.
and I don't understand your position. And I've made an assumption about you, or I've made an assumption about your position.
Right.
If me and you sit down to talk and I allow you the opportunity to explain to me um where your perspective comes from, then that's empathetic or therapeutic listening.
Right.
And I also think that that type of listening is the listening that therapists have to use when they're listening to their clients,
Yep.
or that doctors have to use when they're listening to their patients. You have to listen with um, with unbiasedness, I think,
Hmm.
and you have to see the other person's perspective in order to understand what's going on with them,
And
basically.
also with empathetic listening, you got to take yourself out of the equation. You
Yes.
can't listen to them from the perspective of how you would do it. You know what I'm saying? It's
But you are supposed to, with excuse me, empathetic listening, you have to listen in order to relate to someone else's experience as if it was your own, though. So
okay.
it's like putting myself in your shoes. Like if I were Sherrod, how would I feel
Hmm.
about this particular situation?
Right.
So if I put myself in your position, now I can understand where you're coming from. I
Like
might not do it as Tracy,
okay.
but as Sherrod, now I get it. Now I
Okay.
understand.
So now you understand that my feelings is hurt that you talked about my singing and okay.
I do, and I apologize,
All
but
right.
please don't sing again.
It's just the microphones aren't really good for
Oh,
saying
is
that.
that it? We
That's
gonna
what it
blame it
is.
on the
Yeah, these
equipment?
these microphones are just good for talking. They ain't good for singing.
Oh,
You know.
okay, okay. But I know you got other microphones, and I would venture to say that I don't care what microphone you plug in,
Yeah, I
it's
when
not gonna help us.
hey, when I was backing up El DeBarge, right? You know, backing him up, and he used to just
We're not talking about the 7 types of lying. We talking about the 7 types of listening. So let me get to number 7, then we can get into it. The last one is critical listening. If you need to analyze complex information, you need to use critical listening.
hmm
Critical listening is very similar to critical thinking. We use critical thinking while listening goes deeper than comprehensive listening.
okay.
Instead of taking the information at face value, you can use critical listening to evaluate what's being said. So it's like um you could tell me something and I'm gonna search for clues. Like I'm gonna search for the truth in that. Like is this bullshit or is this real shit?
Right.
That's for me. That's like the breakdown of critical listening. I'm listening to see if what you're saying has value and holds weight. Um, critical listening. Critical listening is crucial when problem solving at work.
hmm
Um, for example, you use this type of listening when trying to choose how to handle an unusual and complex client request. Like let's say I'm a graphic designer and my client is an entrepreneur, or let's say I'm a marketing professional and my client is an entrepreneur and they know what they want, but they don't know precisely or exactly what they want.
hmm
So I have to ask my client a series of questions so I can pull out what they need for the marketing campaign so that I can promote their
Right.
business. So I have to listen, I have to tune in to see the wants, needs, and desires of my client so I can inject those things in our marketing plan. So that's how critical listening would would look in the workplace.
You know what?
Um,
That's why I find it difficult. I don't understand how people, some people love to do business through text only. Like when you do something through
no.
Etsy, it's
Mm,
you don't really get a phone call to talk to these people because I've had some artwork done from some people on Etsy. You
mm,
don't talk to them. It's just everything is type. And it's like, oh man, this is a slow way to communicate. And
it is.
it's satisfied with the work, but I'd rather talk to you.
Yes. And the same thing goes with relationships now. Um, we're in a a text technologically rooted
Yeah,
um relationship kind of thing. And people, I'll give you an example. I was at Home Depot the other day, and a young man, and I mean young, he was 35. He had pushed up on me. He had asked me for my number, and I was like, okay, how old are you? He was like, I'm 35. But I was like, well, I'm 52. How old am I? I'm 52.
yeah,
And he was like, I love older women, whatever. So I gave the man my phone number. He wanted to text me to death. I'm a grown lady, like real grown. You're gonna have to call me. I'm first of all, if you approach me and you tell me that you're interested in me, you're gonna have to call me first. Don't text me and expect to get to know me via text
right, right,
because I need to exercise, what is it? Um, Discriminative listening and informational listening. I need to hear the tone of your voice. I
right,
need to
right,
know if you're sincere when you say something to me because I can tell when somebody is speaking and with their tone if they really mean something that they're saying.
right.
You know, text is text. And when you're texting, you tone can get misconstrued in a text because I may read it a certain way that you didn't send it. Like
Right,
I,
right.
I may read something into your text. So that's why I think when it's getting to know somebody time, don't text. Call, let's talk or let's meet in
Mm-hmm.
person so I can get to know you because I need to look at you. I need to hear your voice. I need to see how you say certain
The
things.
body
I
language.
need to I need to analyze how my body responds to your energy, how, I need to see because my body is the first indicator of the truth. So I need to hear those things. I need to be around you. I can't get what I need to get from a text. I cannot. But I also think that we listen with more than our ears, though.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I listen with everything. I do. And I think that's important for relationships. And I think listening is also a part of being considerate, of consideration. Like, so if you ask your lady, how you doing? And she like, I'm okay. If you paying attention to her voice, how she looks, her body movement, all of that is you listening. All of that is you hearing what she's saying. So when somebody says, "Oh, I hear you," it's more than just listening. It's
Mm-hmm.
deeper than listening. Like, I hear you. I know what you're saying. I get it. So you can't if you say how you doing? She like, oh, I'm okay. And you be like, all right, sweet, peace. Then are you really listening though? You know what I mean? Like it's clear that there's more going on. And some people aren't necessarily always forthright with what they're feeling
Right.
and what's going on with them. And sometimes when you care about somebody, you have to kind of probe and you got to take a minute. Cause I was over my sister's house one day and we were having sister time and her husband had just come home from work. And she was like, hey, hey babe, how you doing? Whatever. And he was down. And she was going about her business. And then she just stopped. And she gave him her undivided attention because she was tuned in. Like, oh, something isn't right. Let me give him my undivided attention because something isn't right. So listening is more than just giving your ear. It's giving your time, your energy, your space to that person so you can be totally tuned into them.
Right.
And I think that that's important for relationships, for every relationship. Even as a teacher, I am keenly aware of what's going on with my students. I'm this way because of a teacher that we had when we were in high school. I'm the kind of teacher I am because of Roger Ussery. And I'm going to tell you why. So, senior year of high school, um, my brother and my father, um, they had a criminal enterprise. Senior year of high school, they were convicted and went to prison. And the whole shit made the paper, right?
Okay.
So when we were in Roger's class, remember he had what did he call it? Current events every Friday where we would read the newspaper, right? So this particular Friday, I had gotten to school early and he was already there. And I was walking down the hall and he was coming toward me and he had a newspaper in his hand. And he was like, Rix, come here. Let me talk to you about something. You know, I used to do super
Let me
cool.
talk to you for a minute.
Yeah. And so we went in the classroom and he opened up the paper and there was big as day, Willie Ricks, Stephen Ricks, you know, the whole breakdown of their whole criminal enterprise and why they had been arrested and all that. And it was very damaging information. Scathing, it was a scathing article. It was horrible.
Okay.
And so I was like, fuck, to myself, damn, it's Friday. Somebody is going to read. Because remember, we all used to have to read from the paper.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, damn, somebody's going to read this shit out loud. And now everybody, because I had not told anybody what was going on because it had been going on for months. So after I looked at the paper, he just folded it up and he was like, okay, you know, let me do whatever. And I went about my business. So after I left him, I was nervous and I was like, fuck, somebody is gonna out me. Somebody is gonna read this article in front of everybody. So we get to Black History class and I'm sitting there nervous as fuck. So Raj is like, okay, y'all, we're not doing current events today. We're gonna do something else. And he did that for me because he knew that somebody was going to read that article and he also probably was paying attention to me and could see my distress and angst.
Mm-hmm.
So for me as a teacher, I, because of that incident, am tuned in to all of my kids.
Right.
I'm tuned into their body language. I'm tuned into how they say things, to what they say, and it could be small things, but I make sure that I'm tuned in because I never want any of my kids to feel like they're alone in something. Because when I was in high school, the only person that I had that was like me, how I am now as a teacher, was Roger Ussery. I did not have anybody that was tuned in
Okay.
that because shit was fucked up for me in high school and nobody knew.
Right.
So for him to be tuned in, it was just that one incident, but it left an indelible impression on me. So now, and then too, you know, it all has to do with who you are as a person and your own personal growth. I have dedicated my life to listening and paying attention and to giving people reciprocity and consideration. So as a teacher, that's the core part of my job is to pay attention, to listen, because so many kids slip through the cracks because nobody's paying attention,
Mm-hmm.
because nobody's listening to them. So, and then you have to listen to what they're saying too. Kids be, man, these kids, they need so fucking much and they're not getting a lot of it from home. So when they come to school, they're spending 8 hours a day with me. They're spending more time with me than they are with their parents. And most of the kids that I deal with are able to talk to me in a way they can't talk to their parents because I give kids a safe space to tell their unadulterated truth and
Okay.
I listen. Most parents, well, I'm not going to say most parents. A lot of parents don't listen.
Hmm.
They just want to discipline and they want to, excuse me, control their kids for whatever reason. And that's not, I don't think that's a parent's job.
Well,
I think a parent's
I'm gonna put
job.
it to you this way. I believe in you got to have it all. You know, any good leader is going to have some structure, some discipline, some organization, but
Hmm.
then they also going to have some leeway because you can't micromanage, and that's not what when I was supervisor, whatever, I never micromanaged, and when it comes to my kids, I don't micromanage them either. You know,
Hmm.
I I listened to them. The door was always open, and when I
Did you
was,
always have that though? Like,
you
did
know
you
what?
go into parenthood with that?
I'm gonna be totally honest with you, because I didn't have it growing up. You know, my
Okay.
pops was like, "Do as I say, do it when I tell you to do it, and we all right." You
He's a
know,
military man
he was
though.
military man, right? And
Hmm.
to be totally honest with you, there was there was a need for what he did. He had three
Hmm.
boys, kind of wild, you know,
Hmm.
and it's like he instilled that in us. But now
Hmm.
my thinking is and always will be the next generation has to do better with the
Hmm.
foundation we were given. So now I
Right.
take that structure, that discipline, and that organization. But now, whenever my children want to speak, I was all, yeah, what's up? I'm gonna sit down. I'm gonna talk to you, and I'm gonna tell you one thing. You know, when I whoop my kids, right? Before I got to that point, I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna talk to you.
Hmm.
And I
Did you
found
talk him to
out,
death?
huh?
Did you talk him to death?
Man, I would talk to them real slow like this. And then I would
Mm-mm.
make them stand up and listen to me. And I wouldn't allow them to lean or sit. And they'd be falling asleep, standing up. Like, that was the worst punishment than me whooping them.
Hmm.
And now when we get older, now that they're older rather, I'm just seasoned, they're older. So as they've aged, they come to me now. It's like, man, woo, woo, woo. And we have these adult conversations.
Hmm.
And the one thing I do notice that a lot of parents do when their children get older, they don't realize the dynamics of the relationship has changed. Yeah, they're still our
Hmm.
kids, but they're
Hmm.
grown now. Now we
Hmm.
have to listen to them differently.
Hmm.
It's no more, go sit down, man. Now I got to talk. When I was talking to my son, it's like, yo, what's up? I holla at him. We like, I get
Hmm.
to kick it. And
Hmm.
he's a man now.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? He's not a little boy. So now my listening has changed.
Hmm.
And the good thing about it is, they allow you when they get a certain age because they have to allow you now to guide them.
Hmm. Yeah.
And
And they have to listen in a way
yeah,
that because even now as an adult dealing with my mom, so me and my mother did not have an intimate relationship when I was younger.
okay.
In my formidable years, like my high school years and my early 20s, well,
But you know
all of my
what?
20s.
You would never think that you had any issues going on because you was always a happy-go-lucky individual in school. You was always smiling, laughing, the whole nine yards.
That was a mask. That was a
Damn.
mask, and that was a coping mechanism. Shit was fucked up, Sherrod. Like so fucked up. So fucked up. Maybe offline we'll talk about it one day. But now I because me and my mom did not have a relationship. We were close because that's my mother. And it
Hmm.
was, my brother and my sister were out of the house. So it was just her and us. And I protected my mother. I loved her. And there were certain things that I didn't do as a youngster because she was my mother and because she had been through so much
Okay.
and so much with my siblings. So I don't want to give her too much trouble. But shit, I was still young and didn't know shit and was doing dumb shit too. But she was going through a thing. And I was keenly aware of what she was going through because I was going through it with her because
Okay.
it was just me and her. So and my mother did not give me a lot of guidance. She gave me food, clothing, and shelter.
Mm,
She paid for my education,
okay.
and she introduced me to art and culture, but the things that I needed as a young Black girl, I was not getting from my mother.
Okay.
So I did a lot of hard living and growing when I was in my early 20s.
Okay.
It wasn't until I turned 30 that I began to see my mother as more than my mother, because she was 30 years old when she had me. So my mom was 30. She had 3 kids, a husband, 2 cars, a house, and all these grown up responsibilities. My mama was grown at 30. And when I was 30, I wasn't. I was still out here, shit, living like my best life. I was just out here, Sherrod. But now, me and my mother are very close. Like, she's my bestie. There is nothing I cannot talk to my mother, my 83-year-old mother, about.
Okay.
So one day, so our relationship, after I turned 30, our relationship began to progress. And I think she started to see me as a person other than her daughter, as Tracy, the woman growing into womanhood. And I started seeing her as a woman, and I started paying attention to where she came from. So, because I started seeing my mother in a different way, I also started to see my grandmother in a different way.
Okay.
And so I started to understand who my mother was because of my grandmother and the life that she lived with my grandmother. And so that life resulted in the mother that I had, that I wished was somebody different when I was in high school. So, at the end of my 20s, early 30s, me and my mother's relationship started to shift. And it was because of a decision that I had made to start to open up, because I was very closed. I kept things very close to my chest. Um, and I only started to open up because of the friend group that I had. So, long story short, I had met my best friends when I was in my early 20s. And I didn't talk at all, Sherrod. You know, I would give people very surface, very superficial versions of me
Okay.
because I didn't want to get hurt. Because up until then, that's what life for me was about. It was all fucked up shit. So my one friend, Big Reg, was like, "Look, if we gonna be friends, you're gonna have to start talking. You're gonna have to start giving of yourself. Cause we gotta start connecting. We gotta do something." And he is the one that started me to open up and to melt this ice house that I lived in.
Okay.
So because I started doing that, and I was always a good listener, I just wasn't a good I was not a good contributor of intimate I didn't contribute into intimate conversations. I would back away. I've always played the background. I'm comfortable there. So because I started to open up in my friend group, that allowed me to start to open up to my mother. And my mother was also having a shift in her life too, separate from me. And she was starting to open up as well. And it also had to do with my brother was also in prison. So I was having this relationship with my brother via mail. We were writing each other letters, and I was able to express in those letters. And my brother was able to express in his letters. So there was emotional growth happening there just by virtue of us communicating through letters.
Mm,
But the same thing was happening between my brother and my mother. So because she was opening up in that way and I was opening up. I had this friend who was like kind of forcing me to come out of this shell. Then I was able to then start to build a new relationship, I guess, with my mom. So one day I was on the phone. I probably had to be about 26 or 27. And I was on the phone with her and I was talking about anal sex because I had done a survey among my friends, and I was like, because I called my friend one day. No, it wasn't about, well, it was anal sex, but I called my friend one day, like, girl, you know, we're going to have to eat booty one day. And she got quiet. Now, I had to be about 27. I wasn't quite 30. And she got quiet. And I said, bitches, you already licking booty? She was like, well, yeah, bitch. I mean, now, Sherrod, I'm gonna wrap this up. I'm gonna come to my point. But I was slow. I was the last person in our friend group when we were in high school. I was the last person to do anything. So like everybody around me was fucking and sucking, and I wasn't doing shit, right? So the same thing was happening in my grown up friend group. So I was a late bloomer, okay? So I was like, damn, you already out here licking booty. So she like, well, yeah, bitch, I live with a man. What the fuck do you think? So I got off the phone with her and I called my other friend. And I was like, girl, I need you to be honest with me. Has you done licked? And she was like, well, yeah, I done tried it. And I was like, oh my God. So right, I couldn't believe it. I was outdone. Because that was such
A taboo
because
thing.
remember saying back in the day, like if somebody wanted to drink some of your soda, they'd be like, play fair, right? Nobody says that anymore because nobody fucking plays fair anymore. Because well, anyway, so I didn't do a lot of shit. I didn't experiment sexually at all. Okay, I was a real late bloomer. So my best friend was over, and I called my mother, and I was like, "Hey, mom, do you be over there licking ass?" And so she was like, "Well, okay. First of all, because my mom is very, she need all the information before she gives her response." And she was like, "Where is this coming from? What's happening?" And I was like, "Well, I just found out that I'm a late bloomer, basically, and my friends are out here licking ass, and I don't want to lick ass, and I don't want to spread nobody's ass cheeks." And I was just going on and on. And this is true to this day, Sharada. Don't want to spread anybody's ass cheeks.
Oh shit.
So,
Oh man.
so then it went from licking ass to anal sex and all this other stuff. And I'm just going in, just talking, talking, talking. So my friend came from the living room into the kitchen because I was in the kitchen talking. She was like, "Who are you talking to?" And I was like, "I'm talking to mom." She was like, "You talking to your mother?" I'm like, "Well, yeah. Who the fuck else am I gonna call when I need the honest answer?" She was like, "I can't believe it." So that was the start.
Of your
I think it started
relationship
at
changing.
27. It's that was the start of the thing. So there's nothing I can't call and talk to my mother
That's
about.
cool. That's cool.
And she listens before because she doesn't listen to respond. She listens to understand,
Hmm.
so that if I need advice or if I have a question, that she can answer intelligently. And
Right.
I appreciate that about my mother. And she's very non-biased. She's not judgmental in any way. My mom is super bougie, right? But she's not pretentious. So people might think at first glance that she's a certain way. And that's why I think that my friend was so taken aback because, she didn't know my mother yet. They had really just met.
Okay.
So at first glance, my mother does not look like the type of person that you can talk to about licking booty, about,
Hmm.
tossing fucking salad. So now there's not anything that I can't talk to her about. And she's a great listener. And
That's
she's
sweet.
going to ask, "Do you want my advice?" And then she's going to offer,
Hmm.
whatever it is that she can offer.
Right.
And sometimes she doesn't have advice. Sometimes it's like, and she'll say, I can't, this is something that has to be lived by
So you
you.
know what to say. Sometimes the best answer is no answer.
Hmm.
Sometimes a person just needs you to really just sit back and listen. And then
Yes.
because I mean I've gone to the homies a few times and just kicked it, and it's like,
Hmm.
it's like one of them things like, well, hell, you didn't said the answer. You
Right,
know what I'm saying? It's
right.
like, dog, you asking us some shit you already know. You asked the question and you answered it. So what else do
Yes.
you think? Like
Yeah.
when I was going through my
Mm-hmm.
divorce,
Mm-hmm.
oh man, the couple of the homies was going through some bullshit at the same time, and it was like one of the three of us was always getting kicked out the crib on the weekend. It got to the point, man. I just said, I want to hang out this weekend. It's time to get this argument on.
That's terrible.
So,
Terrible.
hey, Thursday, it's on and
Mm.
popping. I'm out by
Oh my
Friday
God.
afternoon.
That is terrible. Oh my
But
God.
yeah, but like I said, sometimes the whole giving answers advice, sometimes you don't need sometimes people just need you to absorb it and it just bounces off because you start reading person's energy and then it's like, bro, you just said it.
You and also too, there have been times where like I've called my friend to get advice from my friend. But the more that like just what you said, the more I talk, I done already gave myself the fucking
Yeah.
answer.
Hmm.
And sometimes you don't know a situation is as bad as it is until you say it out loud.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like when you say it out loud, that's when you're like,
Shit gets real.
yeah, it gets real fucking real. It really,
Yep.
really does. So yeah, so people
Hmm.
um in the internet world, seven types of communication. Familiarize yourself with them.
Yeah.
All seven types are important. And most of us use all seven types at some point during our lifetimes regularly.
Yep.
But I think it's important to listen and hear. There are those two things are two totally different things. And don't listen just to respond.
Yep.
Listen to hear. Listen so that you can comprehend. Listen so that you can understand. Listen so that you all can communicate intelligently and effectively with each other. And I'm talking about every relationship, not just romance.
There you go. Well,
So that's my verdict.
that's her verdict
Be
for
out here
today.
listening is the verdict.
Hey.
And listen to your partners, y'all. Like, this is coming from a single person. You know, I'm so like now when I look back on my relationship, I think about all of the things that I could have done.
Mm.
And so now like I've taken these mental notes um because and I can acknowledge I wasn't perfect in the relationship and there were times where I didn't listen and I was so stayed in my own way of thinking because and I said this before when I got into my longest relationship. I was only concerned with what I was going to do and what I was going to bring to the relationship. It was a generic version or a generic view of what the relationship was going to be. I never once considered the other person. I just was like, this is what I'm going to do.
Oh
So
wow.
when you get in relationships, you have to consider the individual that you're in. Because I'm like, I'm gonna give him this love, and I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna be cooking, and all of this stuff, but I had to start to tailor what I did in a relationship to fit who he was as an individual so that our relationship could work.
Give and
And
take.
that involved most of it involved listening because
Right.
there were times when I didn't listen and I
Okay.
was so arrogant in my position that there were times where it was all about me and it could never be all about one person. So you got to listen.
Hey.
And if you're a boss, if you a manager or supervisor, listen to your goddamn employees. Shit, because they are the ones that make the business work.
Right.
So if your best employees are telling you something, you are obligated to listen and take that information that your employees are telling you to make your business better.
There you go.
There you go.
That's
And
the
also,
verdict.
that's the verdict. And listen to your woman about that sex though.
Yeah, bro. Serious business. Listen, because you don't want to
Yes.
be sitting there like, what?
Right, with that stupid face. Mm.
So, my folks out there, I appreciate y'all listening to the Virgo Verdict. Remember, like, share, and subscribe so we can grow the community. I'm Sherrod Cohen, and
T-Rex.
peace.
Peace.